Welcome to the Pat White Show.
Well, another political race is about to happen, but it's not the standard political race you think about. This one is a caucus. Sort of like when Mayor Tom passed away, the Democrats had a caucus and they picked the person to fill in for the mayor for when Mayor Tom passed. And that was Sharon Tucker. So that's who our mayor is. Well, Republicans got the same thing coming up, and it involves the city clerk. The current city clerk is Lana Kiesling. And she was elected into that position, and she has done a very good job, by the way. But she also became very, very good at representing the Republican Party here in Fort Wayne, Allen County, and now she's the head of the Republican Party in the state of Indiana. 2 jobs she was dealing with. One job being the clerk, the other job being the head of the Republican Party here in Indiana. And the Democrats, fairly so, said, well, okay, that's not fair. You can't have 2 jobs. You got to quit one, decide what you want to do. Well, she's made a decision. She is going to forego her position as the Allen County clerk, and she is going to continue running as the head of the Republican Party here in the state of Indiana. And my hat's off to her for that. That's a tough job, and she's undertaking it, but I'm sure she's going to do a good job. She really is a class act. But at a packed event, she decided who she wants to be appointed, because the Republican Party, sort of like the mayor situation, is going to have to appoint a new clerk. And the city clerk's a pretty important job, folks, whether you realize it or not. The person she has said, I want to be the new clerk, is none other than John McGauley. That's right, John McGauley. Now, I know a little bit about John. Actually, I kind of know John a little bit because he's been trying to con me into going to a game at Parkview Field. And to be honest with you folks, I have never been to Parkview Field in my entire life because when I was on the radio, I was a detractor of building Parkview Field. I was a big fan of the Wizards, and I call them the Wizards Ballpark at the Coliseum. Since then, I have been, well, not cursed, but I have been embarrassed by the fact that Parkview Field has been a huge success. It has been. The baseball team, the Tin Caps, who I misnamed, and I admit that, have also done very well. Good ballpark, one of the best ballparks in America, according to the people who rate these things. They're one of the top 3 minor league ballparks in America. That's pretty doggone good. But anyway, John McGauley's been trying to get me to go to a game inside of the Parkview Field for over a year now. I haven't budged. So he's even wants to bring in another individual, Judge Phil, and wants him to come in, all of us to go to the ballpark. Well, I've still resisted because I'm ashamed to go there because I badmouthed the place. And I did, and for that I'm ever regretting it. But John McGauley is a Ball State graduate, journalism degree. It's funny because both have journalism degrees. John is also an avid photographer, and I mean a very, very good avid photographer. Back in the old days, he used to use an AE1 Canon. I know because I had one myself, and now I moved up to Nikon. I'm sure he has too. But John also possesses a Part 107 license, FAA. You know what that means? He flies drones. He's licensed drone pilot. And he shoots some photographs with his drone that are spectacular. Now, he's been working for the Superior Court, sort of being the PIO, if you will. So he's been a PIO in the media for a long time. John is highly qualified, and Ms. Kiesling says, I want John McGauley to take my job. Now, the Allen County Republican Party is going to vote for who they want, and I hope they do, and I hope they pick John McGauley, because I believe he is immensely qualified in his other jobs. He knows what he's doing. He's smart, Ball State graduate, and he's got a journalism degree and likes to take photos. That definitely puts him on the good side of my program. But that's the situation coming up, and it's going to happen very soon. And the Republicans have their caucus, of which I am not. I repeat, I am not a part of that caucus in any way, shape, or form. I'm an outsider with an opinion. Sometimes they don't like it. You know, that's what happens when you have opinions. But in this case, my opinion is John McGauley, selected by Lana Kiesling to be her successor in the Allen County Clerk's office is the right man for this job. And as the former recorder for Allen County, which she was also herself, she knows good quality. And I believe John McGauley is the right guy for the job of city clerk. And that's how I feel. And now you know. On May 5th of this year is a primary election. Now, most people don't consider primary elections a big deal, and frankly, very few people vote in the grand scheme of things when you consider a regular national election. But this May primary is going to be very important for a number of reasons for those of us who live in northeastern Indiana, because there's going to be a senatorial race and a sheriff's race. Now, the senatorial race is going to feature Liz Brown. And Liz Brown is a seasoned politician who's been around for, a number of years. She's very conservative. However, she had a little tussle going on with the folks down in Indianapolis having to do with redistricting the state of Indiana and, make it more red, for lack of a better term. Now, that didn't go through. She ultimately lost a job she had down in Indianapolis in the Senate House, whatever job that was. And she's being criticized by certain folks. Now, she is up for re-election. You always have a primary for an election, and the primary here in Indiana is on May the 5th. Write that down. Because Liz Brown will be facing off against Darren Vaught. That's a name you've probably heard. It's been around pretty much. It has to do with a lot of things involving Fort Wayne, Allen County. Darren Vaught sits on the school board of the Northwest Allen County School District. He ran against Liz back in 2014 in the primary, but he got his butt kicked. That's all I can say. The person who was close enough to Liz, and was only a few hundred votes difference, was Ken Freeze. Ken Freeze, surprisingly enough, is running for sheriff once again here in Allen County. Now, Troy Hershberger is the current sheriff, served 4 terms. I have nothing against him. I don't know him personally. But Ken Freeze, I do know. I do know all the stuff he's done as sheriff. I do know that he's the coordinator for the Crime Stoppers for 10 counties. And I do know the things he wants to bring back to the sheriff's office, including the reserve force, the citizens cadets, the young people coming up wanting to be in the sheriff's department, and the Citizens Academy for the Sheriff's Department. Those are things that I think are very important to the Sheriff's Department, and frankly, in my humble opinion, are needed. But the election primary is May the 5th. So if you plan to vote, and I hope you do, you're going to vote for either Liz Brown or Republican candidate Darren Vaught. Those two have fought before. How will it end this time? I do not know. And the primary for the Sheriff's Department between Ken Freeze, between the sheriff, and the upcoming primary between Ken Freeze, former sheriff, and Troy Hershberger, the current sheriff, will be taking place in May. It's however you decide to vote determine who's going to win. But for the first time in a long time, the primary coming up May the 5th, the off-season primary, is going to be very, very important for the voters of Allen County. And in this case, I strongly suggest you vote. And now you know. So let me ask you a question. If someone asks you, what would you rather be, rich or famous, which one would you take? Well, you go back to 1956, which I agree is decades and decades ago. Most of you were never born then. There was a movie, an Alfred Hitchcock movie by the name of The Man Who Knew Too Much. And it featured Doris Day and Jimmy Stewart. It's a Hitchcock film, so you know what a Hitchcock film is. But anyway, during that movie, she sang a song called Que Sera Sera. And what that means is whatever will be, will be. But the lyrics said, am I going to be rich or am I going to be famous? Well, when it comes to college athletics, that's a very interesting question that needs to be asked by every athlete playing in whatever sport they're playing in major college. Because a few years back, the judicial system said, You guys got to start paying the college athletes because you're using their name, their image, their likeness, and you're making a whole lot of money on it. And if you're making a whole lot of money on it, you got to cut the players in on a cut of the deal and how much they're going to make. So, turns out that schools decided to, well, since we've got to pay the athletes, let's see how much money we can garner together with from our college fund and from our alumni who have more money than God, and see what we can pay. And maybe we could buy the best athletes in the United States, 5-star athletes, we could buy them and win national championships. Well, did that work out that way? Now, here's an interesting point. Apparently, the highest paid athlete in the United States, in college football at least, is a Manning. Well, Manning. That's in Texas. And he is a cousin of the Mannings. He's in the Manning clan. Apparently, he is earning $6 million a year. Now, if he's getting $6 million a year, and assume he gets that every year for 4 years, that's like $24 million. Before he even plays a down at professional football, he's set for life. He doesn't have to worry about being drafted and playing and getting himself hurt or whatever. He's got $25 million in the bank, and he can live pretty doggone well, and I mean pretty doggone well, being that high paid. So, did it make them the number one team in America? Are they in the college football playoffs? Ask yourself that question. So, how does that affect other teams? What are the big teams with the big money? Well, Texas has got probably the most money in the NIL, but guess who's number 2? Ohio State, Buckeyes. Where are they? Then you go down to LSU. Well, they have so many different coaches in there. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they got a lot of money. Followed by Georgia, then Texas A&M, Michigan, Alabama, Florida, and Auburn. A lot of SEC schools in there with a whole lot of money. But how well are they doing in the football playoffs? Really ask yourself that question. How well are they doing? Well, okay. But then you got one little team out there. One little team is in the college playoffs, is currently undefeated. And that's Indiana University. And where are they on the money poll? Well, they're way down toward the bottom, like number 28, I believe it is. And yet, look at the team they have. Look at this, the athletes they have. Now, do they have a chance to go on and become rich because they're not playing for a great team money-wise? They can become famous. Yes, Heisman Trophy winner, famous, probably number 1 draft pick. The MVP from the bowl game they just played. The center, offensive center, took MVP, famous. They'll make good money down the road. So what are you going to be, rich or famous? Yes, you can be rich in college, but if you're famous in college, you could end up being rich when you get drafted into pros, maybe. Well, so the point is that now we have a thing called the portal. The portal is where athletes can transfer from whatever team they're playing to whatever team they want to play to, whoever attracts them with the most money or the most whatever. Well, here's what's happening at Indiana University with the portal that's going on right now. Players are coming to Indiana University from all over the United States. I'm talking about big schools. Right now, their number 1 player is from TCU. His name is Josh Hoover. Apparently, he's a pretty good quarterback. They think he's going to take Fernando's place. But you've got Nick Marsh, Xavier Gillum, Turbo Richard. I mean, there's a bunch of names you can come in there from all these different schools, wide receivers, defensive backs, the defensive ends. They're getting a whole mess of people coming to play at IU. But IU's not a big money school, so they're not playing necessarily for the money. They're playing for the fame. And once again, we go back to the question, would you rather be famous or rich? Apparently, many of these kids want to be famous. They want to be number 1. They want to have the college football championship on their resume. And if you think about it, you go back to 1976, the Indiana basketball team was undefeated that year. Bob Knight took the team all the way undefeated to NCAA championship. And we still talk about those players today. Yes, they did extremely well for themselves, but they also became very, very famous. So, at Indiana University, the question is it money or fame? Apparently, the way I see it, it's fame. They want to be on the top team with the top coach and win the top award, the NCAA championship. And when you think about it, que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. Money or fame. At Indiana University, apparently, it's fame. And now, you know. Well, it's certainly old news that everybody knows that the United States invaded Venezuela, grabbed their so-called leader, who's not really an elected leader, brought him back to the United States with him and his wife to be charged with narco-terrorism because the arrest warrant was out for him. And by the way, there was a large bounty. I think it was $25 to $50 million bounty. Now, when you put a bounty on somebody, doesn't that mean you want them caught? Just bringing that up as an aside. But anyway, so now Maduro's back in the United States, but the United States is now going to be running, at least in the short term, Venezuela. But one of the biggest things Venezuela was doing that you probably didn't know about, or maybe you did but not thinking about, was they were selling what they have. And what they have is oil. They've got a whole lot of oil. Well, they were selling crude oil to Cuba. In turn, Cuba was sending them medical things to be used for their medical situation and other stuff that Cuba was able to export to Venezuela. Now, the oil has been cut off to Cuba because no more tankers going to Cuba because we're ensuring that doesn't happen. But does that really matter to Cuba? They're not getting any more oil? Ask yourself that question. Well, problem is, Cuba relies on that oil to fire up their electric plants. That's right, electricity didn't come out of nowhere, folks. You got to manufacture it somehow, and in Cuba they use oil to run the turbines that creates electricity that feeds their country. Now, if they don't have any more oil, they can't make electricity, what happens? Well, the electric grid's going to go down, the public transportation is going to go down, there's going to be power blackouts, and how are you going to keep your food refrigerated if you don't have any power? See where this could be going in Cuba? Now, Cuba doesn't produce enough oil. They can't. There's no oil wells in Cuba. They get it. They import it from somebody else. So what's going to change now in the country of Cuba? Keep in mind, nothing happens quickly. Please understand that. This is a slow progression. This takes time for anything to happen. But things will be happening in Cuba. That now the changes are coming along. No more oil, okay. So what's going to happen? Well, power grid, it's going to go down. There's going to be blackouts in Cuba. There's going to be hospitals running on limited generators. A lot of these hospitals in Cuba, because a lot of people come to Cuba for medical services. I don't know if you realize it or not, a lot of Canadians actually come down from Canada because they can't get care in Canada under their particular system they have, which is Medicaid for Medicare for everybody, which is what they want to put in the United States. But so they can't they can't get taken care of in Canada. They go to Cuba to get their medical procedures done. That's what Canadians are doing down here in Cuba. But the hospitals don't have power for their generators. They can't do medical procedures. All right. So what's going to happen even more? Cuba, it's going to be a transportation breakout because here's what happens. If all those buses in Cuba or those trains in Cuba or whatever they're running to get from point A to point B, they don't have any fuel. All those cars you see in the Cuban streets, those 50s cars that have been redone time and time again, there's no gas. Those cars ain't going anywhere. How are people going to get around? The buses won't be moving. They don't have any fuel. So if the buses don't work, the people who work in Cuba can't get to their jobs. See what's going on here? What's happening? Now, you're going to have medical shortages. You're going to have refrigeration fails on that to store drugs in at cold temperatures. No electricity, no refrigeration, folks. That's what's going to be happening. So all these things are going on that will be going on in Cuba, and it will be happening slowly but surely. It's coming. Now, you're going to have security issues in Cuba because, well, the police are now going to have to get themselves involved on, police raids are going to happen. They're going to have fuel for their cars. Police officers running around their cars, got to put gas in them or else they ain't going anywhere. unless you want to see police running around in rickshaws, which could happen, I suppose. Well, and if they don't have any of those things available to them, how are the police going to control the crowds who are going to get angry? You take away the fuel from people, you take away the electricity from people, they're going to start getting agitated. So, does this mean that Cuba is going to fall? Cuba is going to fail? Well, the thing is, collapse only happens. Collapse in any country will only happen, but you got to have three things happen at one time. Three things happening. Number one, you got to have an energy failure. Okay, that's pretty much a given, and Cuba is about to experience that when they run out of oil. We just don't know how much oil they have in reserve, but they're not getting more oil now from Venezuela. Item number two, you got to have food distribution problems. Now, if they don't have food, people don't eat. People don't eat in the country, I guarantee you they're going to start to get real upset and doing bad things. And number three, loyalty fractures inside of your security services. Now, what this means, if your military is not loyal to who's ever in charge, and they start turning on you, you don't have anybody to run the country. You can't be an authoritarian. You can't be you got one man out there holding up his pistola is not going to stop anything. So if you don't have your security services behind you, ultimately you will fail. Now keep in mind, down in Venezuela, Maduro, he had a security force, but you guess who it's made of? It was made of Cubans and not Venezuelans. Because Maduro didn't trust the Venezuelans because he was not elected and they knew they'd probably assassinate him. So he used nothing but Cuban forces, not just to guard him, but in their police department. And the people that kept the country under control. They were Cubans, not Venezuelans. All right. So if you don't have all those three things going on, they got to all happen at the same time. You can get two, but if you still keep number three, those security forces, you can still maintain control. So what are we looking for in Cuba? It could be, month, 2 months, who knows? You can see the blackouts. You can see fuel rationing. You're going to see transportation shutdowns. Probably military police movements. That's going to happen because people are starting to get agitated. They're going to have to start moving police around to keep them under control. And finally, you're going to see the Cubans have a plea out to the world. We need fuel. We need something to sustain us. We can't keep going anymore in the country. So, is Cuba collapsing tomorrow? Will it be next month? Maybe. Month after that? Maybe. Remember I said, you got to have three things. Right now, they're going to lose their fuel. They're going to lose their energy control. But until such time they lose faith in the security that runs the country, the people protecting the elite and government, once those people turn, the country will turn. And that's what's going to happen because one thing, they lost the flow of oil from Venezuela because Maduro has been transported and taken into custody for narco-terrorism charges. And now the oil is going to be used for other things, other places, other people. But that's what's going to happen in Cuba. Maybe you haven't thought about it, but now I'm telling you what you're going to be facing. Keep an eye on the news. Keep an eye on what you see in the papers. Keep an eye on what happens in southern Florida. The former Cubans there who's going to be talking about this. It's going to come up on the news. You're going to see it on TV. Maybe not now, but eventually, the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you're going to see it happening. But at least I told you up front. Remember, three things need to bring down a country. You can get two, but until you get number three, a country will not fall. And now, you know. Well, here it is early in the month of January. And if you haven't thought about it, maybe you haven't heard anything from the WNBA. That's the Women's National Basketball Association. And remember, at the end of the season, there was talk of a strike and a lockout, right? You probably heard that. After all, we do have a team here in Indiana, the Fever, down in Indianapolis, featuring the mega all-star Caitlin Clark. Well, So their collective bargaining agreement ended up last year, but they decided let's extend the talking period out for another 30 days to the month of the end of January. Now here it is, the middle of January, but the end of January comes up and something has to be decided, right? 30-day extension. Are they going to pay the players what the players want? Well, if they do, the league is probably going to go bankrupt, to be honest with you. Because, well, the entire league is based upon, whether anybody likes to admit it or not, the entire league is based on one player that caught America's attention, caught the world's attention, frankly. Her name was Clark. But because she was so hated by the players in the league, because she was, well, white, she was straight, and she was earning a whole lot more money than they were, so they decided to retaliate against her and make her life a living hell, and they did. She was injured, worked for 13 games of the season this past year, and was out the rest of the time. Well, now she's had plenty of time to heal. She's tried out for the USA team and looks like she's going to make it. And ultimately into the World Championships and eventually the Olympics. But what's going to happen to the WNBA? Well, here's the thing. Some of the players said, we're going to go into a new league. Plan B, they talked about. And they talked about another thing called Unrivaled. You may have heard the term used. It's a 3-on-3 basketball thing. They thought, well, let's get the stars in there and people will want to watch these women play 3-on-3. It's going to be exciting. And they went to the networks and said, let's sell this plan. And they tried to sell it. They sold it pretty well. At least to the networks, and said, yeah, we'll buy into this. We'll pay the advertising cost, because obviously TV networks want eyeballs watching what they're doing so they can sell the eyeballs and make money. That's what the game is, folks. Advertising is selling a product to somebody else and paying someone to do it. Well, here's something you need to know that just occurred. Remember I was telling you about that Unrivaled League? That's where the 3-on-3. That's what the game was. 3-on-3 basketball, not 5-on-5, 3-on-3. And they just premiered their opening game. I mean, their season opener, the biggest thing everybody was waiting for. Were you waiting for it? Did you watch it? Did you see what was on? Well, let me give you the numbers. So it premiered, and it was on two TV networks, one called True TV. Now, that's apparently some sort of cable network on the internet, I believe it is. I personally don't have it, so I don't watch it, so I don't know. But there is one I do have called TNT, Turner Network Television, TNT. Strictly on cable, folks. It's not on regular over-the-air TV. It's on cable. Well, they had their premiere game, and the ratings have now come in. Now, in the demographic of 18 to 49, that's the demographic they're using. To me, the biggest demo is used 25-54, but this is what they're using in TV. The demo is 18 to 49, okay? That's the demo we're working in, because that's where the eyeballs are. That's where the people are who buy products, right? Let's be honest with yourself. By the time you're over the age of 50, you're probably going to buy the stuff you want to buy, and that's the way you're set in your ways, right? But 18 to 49, you can still convince people to, hey, buy this product or buy that product. So the ratings have come out. On TNT, the rating for the premiere of the three women on 3-on-3 Unrivaled League scored a stunning 0.02. You heard me right. The opening night, the big premiere, should be the biggest anticipation for what's going on, scored a 0.02 in the ratings. Now, they say, well, that's a cable network, not everybody has it. All right, TNT. Let's go to TNT because they were running the same thing. They scored on TNT an 18 to 49 demo a 0.03. Take the numbers, work them down. The total number of people who watch this nationwide, because TNT is nationwide, the True TV nationwide, the total number of bodies who watched the premiere of the all-new Unrivaled League 3-on-3 was less than 150,000 people nationwide. Now you think about that in 50 states, divide that number by 50. That'll tell you how many people in each state on average were watching. So it turns out this big mega thing they're thinking, gee whiz, people are going to want to watch women's sports. It's the latest thing, women's basketball. 150,000, you divide that out. These women are going to, the Unrivaled, be playing in high school gyms, which is back when the WNBA started. So the ratings have been an absolute monumental, complete failure, because normally you start and you build. Starting with a .002 or a .003 and having 150,000 people view your premiere night in your basketball league nationwide, dismal failure, folks. And I can guarantee you some of those clients who are advertising saying, hey, we're going to get the big eyeballs in this thing, are going to be demanding make goods from these cable companies because they're going to say, we want you to deliver X amount of bodies to us. That's the guarantee they make. Your X number of people are going to see your commercial if you buy on this network. They didn't get it, so they're going to have to get makeup points. Makeup commercials run on other places, other times. The Unrivaled League is proving out to be a major league embarrassment. And what's going to happen at the end of January if the women don't settle with the league itself? You're going to either see a lockout or a complete strike. I don't know which is going to happen. But whatever it's going to be, right now, I don't think the NBA or the WNBA women are going to earn all the money they think they deserve that the NBA is getting. Because right now, you better understand something. The WNBA really has only one star. And that one star is owned by Nike. And that one star, whether she plays or not, is living high on the hog. And without her, the WNBA remains to be a backroom schoolhouse ball. That's all it is. Asking for the moon? Shoot for it, yes. But ultimately, you're going to find out what you see ain't necessarily what you get. And that's how it is. And now you know. Well, the year 2026 is going to be very interesting, folks, because it is what is known as a midterm. Now, the midterm presidential elections, president's not running, but obviously everybody in Congress is. So, could it overturn the House? Yes, that's a possibility. But for people here in Indiana, or at least people here in northeast Indiana, very special election is going to be happening, and it's one that you need to know about. Now, here in Allen County, probably the biggest election that's going to be happening is for sheriff. Now, according to the Indiana Constitution, the sheriff is the most powerful person in the county. You may not know this, but the only person who can actually arrest the sheriff is the coroner, according to the Indiana Constitution. Got that from my friend Joe Squadrito, who used to be the sheriff many years ago. Well, right now, it seems the sheriff's race is going to be, well, contested. Seems like Troy Hirschberger, who's the current sheriff, who's been in the job for 4 years, wants to get another 4 years. Person who is challenging him is a former sheriff, Ken Freeze. Now, Ken Freeze was a sheriff for 8 years, a number of years ago, but he's been off the job as sheriff since 2015, and Indiana law allows him to once again run for sheriff if he chooses to. And in this case, he has chosen to run for sheriff again. Now, comparing the two individuals, I can tell you this, they're both good Republicans. Whatever good Republicans are, apparently they are. I'm not a party insider in any way, shape, or form, so I really don't have any particular dog in the fight except this. I do know a lot about Ken Freeze because in my years working in the media, I've gotten to know him. He's a pretty upstanding guy, in my humble opinion. I do not know, and I will put this up front, I don't know Troy Hirschberger. I have never met him personally, but in all recounts, he's a good man. But Sheriff Freeze, or Ken Freeze, wants to bring some things back into the department that I think are very, very important. One, he wants to reinstitute the reserve deputies. That, folks, is a very important part of policing, having reserve deputies, people, men and women, who are capable of working to help the sheriff's department when needed. And you need those people. In a lot of cases, you need them. Secondarily, he wants to bring back the Citizens Academy and cadets, young individuals who want to become sheriff deputies when they grow up. Now, I've seen these cases work in a number of places because while I was retired living in Florida, I happened to be involved with a sheriff's department in Leon County, Florida, which is the capital state, or the capital of the state of Florida, which is where Tallahassee is, and their sheriff's department is very, very big and powerful in that particular county. They have a cadet program, which is very, very good. And they also have a Citizens Academy. And like the Fort Wayne Police just had their recent Citizens Academy, they just started up again. I'm proud to say I'm a graduate of that academy. And it was an honor to be chosen, and it was an honor to go. But Ken Freese wants to reinstitute the Citizens Academy for the Sheriff's Department. And I believe that's a very, very important thing, because the more people you have supporting the police department and the sheriff's department who understand the way it works and the necessary things that you have to have in policing, the better you are. And I can tell you this, there was a citizens advisory board for the sheriff of graduates of that academy down in Florida, and I was lucky enough to be on that board of directors. But I can tell you this, an advisory council to the sheriff gives the sheriff more eyes to know what's going on in his or her community. And I think the idea from Ken Freese of reinstituting the Citizens Academy and possibly a Citizens Academy Council that could be helping the Sheriff Advisory Council would be a great idea. Now, Ken Freese, what's he qualified in? Well, as you may know, he's on the Allen County Council. And he was elected with more votes than anybody else. I think he had 25,000 in the primary. But in the regular election, he scored more votes, 71,515 votes, than anybody running. And he won handily. He's also the coordinator for the folks over at Crime Stoppers. And believe it or not, Crime Stoppers is a very, very big organization that does a whole lot of stuff getting crime off the streets. It isn't just Allen County they work with, it's 10 counties. All of northeastern Indiana is all part of Crime Stoppers. And the guy who runs the organization is Ken Freese. Now, I've known Ken for a number of years. I think he's a fine, upstanding individual. If he wants to run for sheriff, he's determined. He knows what he wants to do. There's things he wants to bring back. This is nothing to say anything against Troy Hirschberger, not in any way, shape, or form. He's an honorable person. But I want the best person to be sheriff in the county of Allen. And frankly, I believe that when Ken Freese was sheriff previously, he was one excellent sheriff. And based on the votes he received at county council, I believe he could be one excellent sheriff once again. So, we got the season coming up, and it's going to be happening. And elections will be happening this year because it's, well, the midterm. And there's one other election coming up, and that's for the state senate, by the way. Liz Brown is running again for state senator. Now, she was in a big tussle involving the redistricting, and apparently there's some people in state government who really don't want her in state government, but she's running again. And I do know Liz Brown. I know her personally a little bit because her daughter and my daughter went to school together. Fine, that's what girls do. But is she going to be reelected? I can't tell you. I don't know, because I don't know who is running against her, who plans to run against her. Sure as heck ain't me, I guarantee you. But whoever it is going to have a really tough time, because Liz is a seasoned professional politician. She knows her way, she knows what she wants, and she is tenacious. So, we got the primaries coming up here, and that's going to be a big thing. For sheriff, well, I'm betting on Ken Freese, because I know him, I like him, and I've seen his work. And I like the ideas that he has for reconstituting the sheriff's department. For Liz Brown, hey, she's been there a long time. She knows what he's doing, and she knows the inside of politics. That's just my observation, nobody else's, and nobody's sticking a gun to my head. I'm just telling you what I think, what I believe, and what I've seen. And I've been around this town for a whole lot of years, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I think you got some pretty decent politicians. And right now, I'm putting my vote towards the ones who I think are going to do the best for this city, this county, and the state of Indiana. And now you know.